The janitor who rewrote the future, asterisk, asterisk. They had burned through 3 days, 20 experts, and millions of dollars, and Mercer Dynamics, once a titan in the race for AI dominance, was on the edge of throwing in the towel. Just when the final sliver of hope flickered out, he walked in. Not a developer, not an executive, not even a consultant. Just a man in a worn-out uniform, mop in one hand, and a daughter waiting for him at home. If you believe in miracles, second chance, redemption, and human kindness, so stay tuned with us and subscribe now, because what is coming in this story, you will shocked. Come on, let's back to the story. He wasn't supposed to be part of the conversation, but a glance at a whiteboard changed everything. Sloan Mercer, the coldest and most feared CEO in Silicon Valley, was watching, and what she did next didn't just alter a project. It rewrote the story, for everyone. Day 3. 6 emergency meetings. $500,000 spent, asterisk, asterisk. In a sterile glass-walled boardroom, Sloan's voice cut through the air, slicing through the tension like ice against glass. 3 days. 17 people. And this is what you've brought me. No one dared respond. On the massive LED display, the latest AI iteration had vomited out red flags, error bars, missed predictions, performance dips. It was chaos in pixels. Every algorithmic solution thrown at the problem had backfired, leaving only silence, stress, and the sour smell of burnt coffee. You have 5 minutes, Sloan hissed. Find me a solution, or pack your desks. Her heels clacked once across the tile before the door hissed shut. In the hallway, a janitor bent to pick up a discarded soda can. His earbuds buzzed with a faint podcast, but his eyes were glued to the digital display inside the room. What he saw wasn't noise. It was a riddle, and Gavin Brooks had always loved riddles. Gavin Brooks, 36, night janitor, widower, former AI prodigy from MIT, before the world cracked him open, before his wife died, before fatherhood called him to drop everything. Now he cleaned offices where algorithms danced across the glass, whispering reminders of the life he'd left behind. He wasn't supposed to enter that room, but as the last engineer filed out, defeated, Gavin stepped inside. The whiteboard stared back, smeared with frustration. Equations twisted in loops, riddled with subtle miscalculations. He tilted his head, squinting. "That's not right," he whispered. "That's backwards." He grabbed a red marker. Gently, carefully, he made his edits, swapped 2 variables, redrew the logic curve, adjusted a misweighted node. Then a voice from the doorway, low and sharp. "You think you fixed it?" He turned slowly. Sloan Mercer stood there, watching him like a hawk. Black suit, hair pulled into a blade of a bun. Her eyes frosted steel. "I wasn't trying to mess with anything," Gavin muttered. "Just saw something that didn't sit right." "You clean floors and rewrite $100 million algorithms?" "Not rewrite, just reframed it, like changing a dull knife for a sharper one. Same cut, less pain." She didn't answer. She simply pulled out her tablet, scanned his edits, and ran a simulation. 8 seconds passed. 18.4% increase in accuracy, she said flatly. 60% reduction in error. For the first time, she really looked at him. Gavin Brooks, janitor, 3 night shifts a week, dropped out of MIT. Wife passed, raising a daughter. A long-waited pause. "Do you understand what you've just done?" I wasn't trying to prove anything," he said. "Just saw what others missed." She stared, as if trying to solve him. "Be in conference room C tomorrow. 8 a.m. You're on the observer list." "I don't belong in that meeting." "That wasn't a suggestion, Mr. Brooks." "What about my daughter?" "We'll get her zoo tickets and snacks if necessary." Then she turned to leave. Just before disappearing down the hall, she glanced back, only for a second. But something in her eyes had shifted. A fracture in the ice. Gavin stood alone in that empty room, staring at the red ink he'd left behind. He looked at the mop leaning in the corner. "Guess I owe you a raise, old friend." That night, Gavin didn't sleep. Not from excitement, but because Lena, his daughter, refused to sleep until he told her every last detail. "You weren't scared of her?" she asked wide-eyed. Gavin smoothed her hair back gently. "When you've held your wife's hand in a hospital and told your daughter she can't ask for her anymore, CEOs don't scare you." Lena stared at him. A quiet, understanding look far beyond her years. "I think she likes you," she whispered. He chuckled, tucked her in, then lay awake staring at the ceiling for a long, long time. 7:50 a.m. The next morning, ***. Gavin stood outside conference room C in the cleanest button-down shirt he owned, still carrying a faint coffee stain near the hem. His daughter's drawing peeked out of his satchel, a stick figure with a mop in one hand and a lightning bolt in the other. Inside, engineers buzzed like bees around a queen. Peppermint breath mints and caffeine sweat hung in the air. The room reeked of pressure. Then she walked in. Sloan Mercer. Instant silence. She glanced once at Gavin and pointed to a seat near the edge. "That's yours." He didn't ask. He sat. "Let's begin." She tapped her tablet. Gavin's red-scribbled sketch exploded onto the screen. "This," she said, "saved us from a multi-phase disaster, reduced training error, increased predictive alignment, and more importantly, reminded us that expertise doesn't always wear a name tag." The room buzzed. Eyes flicked to Gavin, then quickly away. A man, ***, Jason Marlowe, ***, Stanford MBA, raised a hand, masked contempt behind polite words. "With all due respect, how do we know this isn't a fluke?" Sloan didn't blink. "Run the model." Jason hesitated, then entered the new parameters. Smooth. No overfitting. Green bars climbed. "Still," Jason muttered. "Could just be luck." Gavin finally spoke, voice calm, grounded. "Then I hope we're smart enough to learn when luck walks in with a mop." A ripple of chuckles. Sloan didn't laugh, but she did nod, subtle, rare, real. Afterward, she caught him by the elevators. "You held your own. I wasn't trying to. Maybe that's why. You always think in analogies. Helps me explain things to my daughter. Plumbing, baking, car repairs. Makes it stick." She considered this. Interesting. Useful. You might be right. He eyed her carefully. "Do you always talk like you're managing a courtroom?" A pause. "I manage what I can control, especially conversations." "Then I'm probably your worst nightmare." "Maybe," she whispered, "but last night you solved one." That afternoon, Gavin returned to his mop. Same uniform, same cart, but the world around him had changed. Engineers nodded. Interns smiled. One even said, "Nice work," without a trace of sarcasm. Lena drew a new picture that night. This one showed Dad standing beside the lightning lady. The caption read, "Best team." In her office, Sloan stood alone at the window, watching the city blur through rain. She tapped her tablet, ran Gavin's simulation again. Over and over, the line smoothed into perfection. No degree, no clearance, no title. "Still," she whispered, "he saw what no one else did." A knock. Her CTO, Arthur entered. Older, loyal, unfiltered. "That janitor's got people talking. Let them. You think he has more in him." "I know he does." Arthur crossed his arms. "You're considering giving him access." I'm considering listening more to voices that don't echo in boardrooms. He raised an eyebrow. You've changed. He made the system better. No, Arthur said. He made you better. She didn't respond. Just watched the rain streak lines across the glass. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to fix everything immediately. The next day, the invitation arrived, not by email, by hand. A woman from HR walked it across the building to where Gavin was scrubbing out a coffee spill. You're requested, she said, blinking in disbelief. Executive strategy meeting. Tomorrow, 10 sharp. Sure you've got the right guy? Says Gavin Brooks. Title, janitor. Role, guest contributor, technical observation. He stood up, wiping his hands. Must be out of ideas. Maybe, she smirked. Or maybe they're finally paying attention. That night, Gavin didn't go home. He went to the 24-hour laundromat, washed his only 2 dress shirts, leaned against the dryer, flipping through a dog-eared notebook filled with equations, napkin sketches, and silly doodles of Lena. You think I belong in that room? He whispered to no one. In his heart, he heard his wife's voice. Stop overthinking. Just listen. That's the man people trust. Top floor. Strategy room, asterisk asterisk. Glass walls. Chrome chairs. Gavin looked painfully out of place. No lanyard, no blazer. Just a clean shirt. Lena's lucky stone in his pocket, and hope tucked between pages of an old notebook. Is this the janitor? Tight-tied executive asked, disdain curling around every syllable. You can say Gavin. Or guest contributor. If that's easier, he replied, steady as stone. Sloan entered at that moment. He's here, she announced, because none of you cracked the neural lag issue. And just like that, the janitor became the variable no one saw coming, the one that finally made it all make sense. She didn't look at anyone in particular when she spoke. Her voice sharp, confident, absolute. He did the work. He's earned the seat. Let's begin. Just like that, the room fell into a hush, reverent and tense. It wasn't the kind of silence born of obedience. It was the stillness of disruption. Something had shifted. The meeting stretched on for 90 minutes. Gavin sat quietly for most of it, like a man observing a world he'd once belonged to, long before life rerouted him. When he did speak, the room leaned in, not out of politeness, but out of a need to hear a language they'd forgotten. He didn't lace his sentences with buzzwords. No acronyms meant to impress. Just stories. Real ones. Think of your AI like a single parent juggling 3 jobs, he said at one point. You're asking it to optimize results without giving it time to understand why it needs to change. Someone chuckled, caught off guard. Another murmured, Damn, that's actually true. Jason, the senior engineer, couldn't hide the twitch of irritation. I didn't realize we were basing our roadmap on bedtime stories, he said, tone as dry as old toast. Gavin didn't flinch. You ever raised a kid, Jason? No. Then maybe don't knock bedtime. That's where the real learning happens. This time, laughter rippled through the room, like wind catching the corners of paper. And for the first time, Gavin saw something he hadn't expected. Asterisk, asterisk, nods of respect, asterisk, asterisk. Later, in the hallway, Gavin exhaled slowly. He wasn't used to boardrooms or breakthroughs, just brooms. Sloan appeared beside him, holding 2 takeaway coffees. Didn't peg you for a performer, she said, offering one. I'm not, Gavin replied, but I've been underestimated long enough to get good at pretending. He sipped. A pause. That line about bedtime wasn't a line. That's my life. They walked in quiet rhythm. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was space, open and shared. "Why didn't you go back to engineering?" she asked. "MIT doesn't hand out scholarships to widowed single dads working night shifts and packing lunchboxes at 5 a.m. You could have reapplied. Rebuild it all." "I didn't want to rebuild my life. I wanted to build hers." She stopped. The expression on her face flickered. Surprise, perhaps sorrow. "You talk like someone who doesn't realize how rare that is," she whispered. "Or maybe like someone who's too tired to care." A long silence. "Maybe it's time," she added, "that you stop being the man who makes life easier for everyone else and let someone build something for you." He didn't reply, but something inside him stirred. That afternoon, Lena was waiting at the door, shoebox in hand. "How is it?" she asked eagerly. Grown-ups in suits saying words that sound smart until someone brings up bedtime. Her eyes lit up. "So you did tell the dad analogy?" "Sure did." "And no one booed?" She grinned, then opened the box. Inside was a sandwich, 2 stickers, and a folded slip of paper. "I made you a new business card." It read in bright crayon, "Gavin Brooks, fixer of things, solver of grown-up problems, full-time dad." He laughed. "You forgot mop operator. I upgraded you." Back at Mercer Dynamics, Jason Marlowe stood in Sloan's office, arms folded, expression hard. "You're elevating him too fast," he said. "No," she replied calmly. "I'm recognizing value when I see it. He doesn't understand corporate structure. He's got no credentials." Neither did Steve Jobs. Credentials didn't write that code, Jason snapped, but insight did. She met his gaze, unwavering. "Let me ask you something, Jason. When's the last time you surprised yourself?" Jason didn't answer. "He does that every day," she continued. "And he doesn't call it ambition. He calls it surviving." Jason left, seething. Sloan turned to her laptop, not to confirm the simulation again, but because Gavin's work reminded her of something she'd forgotten clarity. It started with a voicemail. Gavin played it 3 times before believing it wasn't a prank. "Mr. Brooks, this is Cecilia from the executive office. Miss Mercer has asked me to extend a personal invitation tonight. 7 p.m. private dinner. Not business. No tie required." He stared at the phone like it might explain itself. But phones don't explain Sloan Mercer. The bistro was a little spot tucked between a florist and a boutique hotel. Warm, worn, and welcoming. The chairs didn't match on purpose. The servers knew the owner's dog by name. Sloan was already there. Head down. Waves soft and unguarded. No armor. Just a woman sitting alone at a window table. Gavin stepped in, suddenly self-conscious of his scuffed boots and jacket, faded by time. "You clean up well," she said with a smile. "I own exactly one not terrible shirt. You're looking at it." Then we're both overdressed for not a date. They sat. The space between them was filled with rosemary bread and quiet jazz. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you know why I asked you here?" "Because you enjoy watching underqualified men panic over wine lists." "Because I haven't had a real conversation in 3 years." He looked at her, puzzled. "No one asks how my day was," she continued. "They ask how my decisions affect their futures." Her voice dropped to a quiet ache. "I eat lunch alone. Sign more NDAs than birthday cards. Some days I forget what my own voice sounds like, unless it's giving orders." Gavin leaned in gently. "Sounds like you need to fire your calendar and hire a therapist." "I tried that. He quit after 2 sessions." "Why?" "Said I made him anxious." Gavin laughed. A real belly-deep laugh. It startled Sloan. Then, she laughed. Quietly at first. Then freely. It was like hearing a glacier crack open. There it is, he said with a nod. The human part of the glacier? Exactly. Their conversation wandered through childhood's favorite books and the heavy weight of loss. I still hear her voice sometimes, Gavin said softly. My wife. How long? 6 years. You speak like she's still close. She is. Just not in the way I want. Sloane looked away. My mother was ambition wrapped in steel, she whispered. Taught me that power meant pushing people away. That love was weakness in a suit. Did you believe her? Longer than I should have. Gavin pulled something from his pocket. Asterisk, asterisk, Lena's drawing, asterisk, asterisk, now faded and folded at the corners. She made this the day I spoke in the boardroom, he said. The stick figure looked like him, holding hands with a tall woman in heels, both smiling. A tiny mop leaned against a laptop in the corner. Sloane studied it for a long moment. You know, she said softly, I've signed multi-million-dollar contracts, spoken on global stages, and this is the most I've ever felt seen. Crayon on paper, from a girl I've never even met. They left the bistro after 10. The night was crisp and clean, like the world had been freshly washed. At his truck, Sloane paused. You still drive this thing? It runs. It's paid off. That's rarer than you think. She leaned against the passenger door. You're a strange man, Gavin Brooks. Coming from you, that's a compliment. He opened the door but hesitated. Why'd you really invite me here? Her voice softened. Because I needed to remember what truth sounds like. And you don't perform. You just show up. He nodded. That's enough. See you at work. Gavin. He turned. I like bedtime stories. And with that, she vanished into the night, heels clicking like punctuation on a sentence neither of them wanted to finish. The next morning started like any other. Gavin dropped Lena at school. She hugged him tightly. You're shining, Daddy, she whispered. People are starting to see it. He smiled all the way to Mercer Dynamics, until he stepped inside. Something was off. Fewer smiles, sharper glances, a quiet that felt like a storm brewing. At the turnstile, a security guard he once joked with stopped him. You've been moved off the janitorial roster, the man said, unreadable. Your clearance is now executive access. CTO's orders. Guess you've been promoted. In the elevator, Jason Marlowe waited. His tie was sharp, his tone sharper. Special technical advisor to the CEO. Must be nice to skip the ladder. I didn't skip anything, Gavin replied. I've been climbing, just on a staircase no one cared to see. Jason leaned in. Let me give you advice, mop man. These people smile because Sloane tells them to. But they're not your friends. You don't belong here. Gavin looked him dead in the eye. If I waited to belong, my daughter would still be hungry. I didn't come here to be liked. I came to build something that works. That morning, in the strategy room, Gavin presented an optimized model for the autonomous response system. Clean. Effective. The team sat frozen. Jason spoke first. His logic checks out, he admitted. But we're not implementing it. Sloane raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. It's untested. No precedent. PR risk. Our clients don't want janitor genius headlines. They want pedigree. So the math is sound, but the resume isn't? Exactly. Gavin sat quietly. Calm. Listening. Gavin, Sloane said. Do you want to respond? He leaned forward. I get it. I'm not what you expected. And maybe that's uncomfortable. But if the numbers work and the system improves, then who's really being unprofessional? The man solving the problem, or the team too proud to accept the solution? The room was silent. If I walked in here with a Stanford degree and $1, 000 blazer. You'd call this innovation. But because I smell like bleach and have my daughter's sticker on my laptop, it's a liability. He let the weight of it settle. If we measure a man's worth by how expensive his mistakes are, maybe it's time we start measuring value differently. Sloan stood slowly. We'll implement the update. Jason said nothing, but his glare said plenty. Later that afternoon, Gavin found Sloan standing alone on the rooftop balcony. The girl with the note and the man who made the code breathe. She stood with arms folded tightly against her chest, sleeves rolled up, jacket forgotten, as the cold skyline blinked indifferently back at her. High above the city, a place of calculated ambition and clinical precision, Sloan Mercer stood not as a CEO, but as a woman grappling with the sudden silence of absence. "Tough room," Gavin said softly from beside her. "They're used to neat pedigrees and polished credentials," she replied. "You're not." "No," he murmured. "I'm used to excellence, wherever it hides." There was a beat of quiet between them. Then Gavin turned toward her, his expression more vulnerable than defiant. "Why are you fighting for me?" She looked at him then, really looked. "Because you remind me of something I used to believe in, before I traded it for board seats and branding guides." "And what's that?" "That brilliance doesn't need permission." He smiled faintly. "Nice idea. Dangerous in the wrong hands. So is silence." But silence is exactly what followed. In the days after, the atmosphere began to shift. Not with celebration, but with disquiet. Conversations dimmed when Gavin entered a room. Engineers who once asked for his insight now turned their backs. Slack channels no longer pinged him. His name was quietly removed from projects without a word. The tide was pulling away, revealing what had been buried beneath polished corporate smiles: resentment, fear, pride. Only Arthur, the CTO, a gruff man made of coffee and honesty, remained the same. One evening, as Gavin sat alone in the break room poring over code, Arthur slid beside him and placed 2 steaming cups of bitter black coffee on the table. "You rattled them." "Didn't mean to. Didn't need to. You just exist. That's the threat." Gavin sighed heavy. "Feels like I'm being pushed out of a room I never even asked to be in." Arthur nodded slowly. "That's because you're playing life, not politics. And life terrifies people who've never had to survive it." Gavin's eyes dropped to a familiar piece of paper, creased from the pocket, but never torn. "Lena's drawing. I'm doing it for her." Arthur clapped him on the back, the gesture rough and fatherly. "Then you're already winning." That night at home, Lena was on the couch, elbows deep in a jigsaw puzzle. Gavin reheated leftover stew, the scent of cumin and thyme filling the small kitchen. "Did they like your idea, Daddy?" "Some did. Some didn't." "But you told the truth." "I did." "Then you did your job." He sat beside her, watching her small fingers maneuver the final sky blue piece into place. "What if people don't like me for doing the right thing?" "Then you find the people who do." Simple. 6 years old, and already wiser than most boardrooms. He kissed her forehead gently. "You ever think about running a company one day? Only if it comes with free popsicles." "I'll write it into the contract." They both laughed, soft, imperfect, precious. And Gavin remembered why he ever dared to chase something beyond the mop. Not to be accepted, but to build a world where she wouldn't have to fight this hard just to be seen. Sloan Mercer didn't notice the change immediately. She breezed past the janitor's closet without pause, too buried in investor meetings, quarterly forecasts, and orchestrated progress. But by the 3rd day, the silence crept in. A strange, unsettling absence. Gavin Brooks was gone. No official memo. No goodbye. No thanks. Just an empty seat in the corner of the lab, and a subtle unraveling of the systems he used to fine-tune with a second glance. The AI models had started to drift again. Nothing catastrophic, just not right. And yet, no one said his name, except her. That night, Sloane found herself on the observation deck, overlooking the glowing lab floor, searching the shadows for something that was no longer there. His silhouette, his tilted head, his squint that always found the flaw no one else saw. Now just an empty corner. A cleaner passed by. No suggestions. No scribbled ideas. Just sterile compliance. That night back in her office, Sloane found a small brown stain near the edge of her desk. A coffee spill from Gavin's first meeting. He'd set his old thermos down with a sheepish smile and said, "Sorry, this thing leaks hope and caffeine in equal measure." She hadn't laughed then. She didn't want the stain removed now. Alone, she wandered the halls. A woman misplaced in the life she'd constructed. Her heels clicked softly through empty corridors, until near the break room, a dim light drew her in. There, pinned to a corkboard between faded flyers and maintenance notices, was a tiny envelope, crayon scrawled, "Asterisk to Miss Mercer. From Lena Brooks, asterisk." She froze. Her breath caught somewhere between guilt and longing. Gently, she opened the envelope like it might vanish in her hands. Inside was a small piece of paper, stars drawn in every corner, and in the center, written in careful, shaky letters, "Thank you for believing in my dad. He used to smile when he talked about you. Now he doesn't smile much, but I still do. Lena, age 6¾ Sloane sank to the bench beside the vending machine, her heels discarded to the floor. She folded her legs beneath her like a child, and she cried, for the first time in months. She didn't tell anyone where she was going the next morning. No chauffeur, no team, just a long black coat, a scarf wound tightly around her neck, and Lena's note folded neatly in her coat pocket, like a compass guiding her home. It took 20 minutes to find Gavin's apartment. The building was tired, the elevator broken. The air smelled of old curry and forgotten rain. When the door opened, it wasn't Gavin, it was Lena, in a glittery unicorn shirt, mismatched socks, and curls held back by a bent paperclip. "Oh, the lady from work," she said matter-of-factly. "The one who makes Daddy nervous." "I probably do. You want to come in? We don't have guest chairs, but we have floor." The apartment was small, lived in, alive. Toys scattered, laundry folded, a battered laptop blinking softly beside engineering books. It smelled of cinnamon and yesterday's hope. "Daddy's out looking for jobs," Lena explained. "He thinks he won't find one. I told him the sun doesn't ask permission to rise." Sloane blinked. "Did you get that from a cartoon?" "Nope. From Daddy." She pulled out a box of Legos. "You can help me build if you want. I only let people I trust work on the roof." Sloane hesitated, then sat. The pieces didn't match. The structure leaned. But Lena's hands were certain. Every block had a place. "He left because he thought he embarrassed you," Lena said suddenly. "People laughed online. I think it hurt." "It wasn't his fault," Sloane replied, her voice raw. "And it didn't embarrass me. It reminded me of what matters." "Do you miss him?" "Yes," Sloane whispered, "and I didn't expect to." Lena handed her a green block. "If you make him smile again, I'll forgive you." Sloane nearly laughed through the tears. "Deal." As she stood to leave, she hesitated by the door. "Can I leave a message for your dad?" "Sticky notes are over there. Blue is for regular stuff. Pink is for important feelings." Sloane chose a pink one. She wrote only 5 words. "We never got to finish," and signed it SM. That night, Gavin returned home. He found Lena asleep on the couch, the Lego house balanced on her belly like a crown. He smiled, exhausted. Then he saw the note. He read it. Once, twice, a third time, then looked at his daughter, still smiling in her sleep. And for the first time in days, so did he. The sun was still hiding behind haze when Sloane Mercer stepped off the subway the next morning into a world of chipped brick, roasted peanuts, and stubborn, defiant life. She moved briskly, ignoring how out of place she looked in a coat worth more than someone's rent. This wasn't her world. Not yet. But she had come back. Apartment 3B. The door opened. Lena stood there like a lighthouse in a sea of clutter. "You came back," she said, beaming. "I said I would. Daddy's at the place with the slow computers and the grumpy man. Want to come in anyway?" This time, Sloane didn't hesitate. "We're making pancakes from scratch today," Lena said. "Well, we were, but then I ran out of scratch." Scratch. You know, that stuff the box always says to use. I think it's like sugar. Or magic. I'm still investigating. Sloane laughed, a real laugh. "May I sit?" "Anywhere that's not sticky," Lena said grandly. "I recommend a beanbag. It's only mildly suspicious." Sloane sat, surprisingly comfortable in the lumpy beanbag. Her eyes scanned the room. Shelves of children's books. Soda-can robots. A cardboard box labeled important inventions. But it was the wall by the window that stole her breath. Photos. Gavin and Lena at the park, holding science fair trophies. One with a hospital bracelet. And in the center, a woman. Kind eyes. Lena's curls. A smile full of sunlight. "That's Mommy," Lena said softly. "She died when I was 3. But Daddy still talks to her. When he thinks I'm asleep." Sloane's voice trembled. "She looks gentle." She was. Daddy said she loved 3 things: rainstorms, old poetry, and the way he made scrambled eggs. That's a good list. He stopped making eggs after she died, but he started building robots, and maps, and stories with treasure hunts in them. Sloane swallowed the lump rising in her throat. He said, "When someone's heart breaks, you either let it stay broken, or you build something beautiful from the pieces." He really said that? Yep. Right after we accidentally set the toaster on fire. It was a very emotional morning. They both smiled. "Lena," Sloane asked gently, "do you know why your dad left the company?" Lena's eyes darkened with wisdom beyond her years. He thought he made people uncomfortable, that they wouldn't see the difference between being out of place and being brilliant. Sloane blinked. The words struck like glass. "He always says people get scared when the wrong person turns out to be right." Silence settled. Then Sloane reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small wrapped box. "Can I give you something?" And in that moment, between a woman searching for redemption and a child wise enough to offer it, something began to heal. The janitor, the girl, and the fire-breathing truth. Lena gave a thoughtful nod, her curls bobbing slightly as her small fingers untied the ribbon on the box. Inside, nestled carefully, was a tiny USB drive with a violet ribbon curled around it like a secret waiting to be discovered. "It's a game," Sloane explained gently. "Your dad helped design the core mechanic. It's not public yet. I thought you should be the first to try it." Lena's eyes widened, round as moonlight. "Does it have dragons?" she whispered, breathless. "Kind of," Sloane smiled. "It has dragons who don't know they're dragons. They think they're pigeons, until one day they try to fly too far and realize they breathe fire." Lena's jaw dropped into a perfect circle. "That's awesome." She pressed the box to her chest like it contained the final piece to a long-lost treasure map. Miss Sloane. Yes, sweetheart. If you make Daddy smile again, I'll forgive you. The words landed like a whispered verdict from the smallest, most sacred courtroom. Asterisk, and they carried weight star. Sloane didn't reply. Her throat closed with emotion she hadn't expected. She simply nodded. A solemn, silent vow. As she walked down the hallway, the building's shadows no longer felt like distance. They felt like a path. Outside, the sky was a dim tapestry of clouds, but for once, Sloane didn't mind their weight pressing down. She wore it like a second skin. Back at Mercer Dynamics, she stepped into her private conference room, pulled the blinds, and asked her assistant to cancel the afternoon calls. No, she said. I've got something more important to do. She sat down, opened her tablet, and began typing. Not a report, not a strategy memo, but something personal. A reparation. A bridge being rebuilt by hand. And at the very top of the screen, before any other word was written, she typed, "Some bridges are worth rebuilding by hand." Gavin Brooks hadn't expected to see her again. Asterisk, asterisk, not here, asterisk, asterisk, in the linoleum halls of Lena's school. Not with her coat off and a folder in hand. Not with the same impossible calm in her eyes. That look, the one that had cut through IPO rooms, quarterly reviews, and hardened hearts like it was nothing. But there she was, waiting. "You came all this way," he said, adjusting the worn leather strap of his satchel. "I needed to see you in person. Most CEOs send emails. Most janitors don't solve AI logic trees with a marker on a whiteboard." A half-smile tugged at Gavin's mouth. He looked down. "So what now? Want me to mop up the next crisis, too?" "No," Sloane said, her voice firmer than steel. "I want you to present at the Investor Summit." The silence that followed had gravity, a silence you could hear. "You want me to what?" "Take the stage. Explain the breakthrough. Walk them through the learning loop you helped redesign. Be the face of our future." Gavin blinked like she'd spoken a different language. "I don't do speeches. I don't do suits. I barely do rooms with more than 6 people and a fire exit." "You don't need a suit. Or a script. You need truth. And that you already have. In spades. They'll see me," he said, more to himself than her. "The janitor. Good. Maybe they need to." She stepped closer, close enough for him to see the fragility behind her force. "When you speak, people listen. Because you've lived what the rest of us try to model and code." Gavin looked like he wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or vanish. "Why me?" "Because I forgot what this company was built on," she said, her voice suddenly quiet. "Not polish. Not projections. People. And if it all goes wrong, then it goes wrong with your name beside mine, not beneath it." That stopped him. "You're putting your neck on the line for me?" "No. I'm standing with you while you put it on the line, for something you already helped build." He held her gaze, then nodded. "One condition." "Name it." "No teleprompters. No handlers. No voice in my ear telling me how to sound smarter." "Deal." He hesitated again. "And don't disappear. Not for me. Not from Lena." She didn't smile, but something warmer, quieter, flickered behind her eyes. I wasn't planning to." 2 days later, the Mercer Dynamics Annual Investor Summit opened in the cavernous ballroom of the Pacific Grand Hotel. Spotlights danced. Suits sparkled. Tension thrummed like an undercurrent beneath marble floors and polished breath. Backstage, Gavin stood clutching his notes with clammy hands, a clean but wrinkled button-down clinging to his shoulders. Lena had refused to let him tuck it in. "You look like a magician," she'd said. "A really nervous one." Beyond the velvet curtain, the audience buzzed. Hundreds of eyes, millions of dollars, and the weight of doubt pressing down like rain before a storm. He peeked out. Sloane stood at the back. Not seated. Not distracted. Her hands clasped in front of her like she was holding breath itself. "It's just a room," Gavin whispered. "A really expensive room with too many opinions." And then he stepped into the light. "I used to mop this floor," he began, voice soft but unshaken. 2 months ago, I was the guy who came in after hours and wiped away the smudges left by people trying to solve billion-dollar problems." A few polite chuckles. Turns out, one of those smudges wasn't a mistake. It was a missing piece. He walked slowly, deliberately, not like a polished speaker, like a man who believed what he was saying. "I don't have an MBA. I don't own a tie. But I know what it's like to raise a daughter on second chances and stretch one paycheck into 6 solutions. Mercer Dynamics isn't just writing code. We're chasing clarity. We're giving our machines a better way to understand the world, one that makes them more human, not less." He clicked a button. Behind him appeared a child's drawing. A tree, its roots tangled, its branches bent toward the sun. This is how machines learn. Like children. With patience. With trial and error. And sometimes with the right correction at the right moment. I was just a janitor. But maybe being invisible helped me see what others missed. A beat of absolute silence. And then someone stood, clapping. Then another. Until the room thundered with applause. Not for flash. Not for numbers. For truth. Backstage, Sloane found him. Her voice low with something she rarely let show. "Aw, I think you just saved our entire year." "That wasn't the plan," Gavin said. "Then what was?" "Say something honest. Hope it lands." "It landed," she whispered. He paused, then gently touched her arm. "You still owe me." "Do I?" "Yeah. You never told me why you came back." She inhaled. "Because Lena made me see something I forgot." "What's that?" "That brilliance doesn't come with a title, and kindness can be terrifying." "A breath. And because I missed your coffee, even the kind that leaks hope." He chuckled. "Dangerous stuff. That's what makes it good." That night, Gavin walked into his apartment. Lena was asleep again, curled up on the couch, popcorn forgotten beside her, a Lego dragon resting on her shoulder like a sleepy sentinel. He kissed her forehead, then turned to the window. The city still pulsed, still glittered, still rushed without pause. But he was different. The way he carried his own name, it didn't feel like a burden anymore. It felt earned. The grand ballroom glowed like a cathedral of ambition. 500 investors, a dozen journalists, and one former janitor now pacing behind the curtain, his heartbeat louder than the opening chime of the summit. He peeked out. Lena sat in the last row, wearing her Galaxy hoodie, legs too short to reach the floor. Sloane stood beside her, arms crossed, face steady, hopeful. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just looked at him like he already belonged. "And now," the host announced, "a voice you haven't heard before, but one you'll be glad you did. Please welcome Gavin Brooks." A murmur swept the room. "The janitor?" Gavin stepped into the light. No slides. No pitch deck. Just a microphone and a blank screen behind him. "I was supposed to clean this room tonight," he said, his voice clear. "I almost didn't come. Not because I was afraid of speaking, but because I was afraid of being seen." The audience leaned in. 6 weeks ago, I was sweeping floors at Mercer Dynamics. Tonight, I'm here because someone forgot to erase the whiteboard, and I saw something no one else did. That's how most people see men like me, Blank. Replaceable. He clicked. A hand-drawn neural network appeared. But what if the solution isn't in the data, or the degrees, or the corner office? What if it's hidden in the people we've stopped listening to? He walked slow, thoughtful. Machines learn like children. Trial, error, patience, trust. If a janitor can fix a learning loop, maybe the loop wasn't broken. Maybe we just built it to ignore the wrong kind of voice. The room stood still. Then someone clapped. Then another. Until the ballroom rose, applauding not for polish, but for humanity. Backstage, Sloan finally exhaled. Lena tugged her sleeve. He didn't use any fancy words. "That's why it worked," Sloan whispered. "That's exactly why." "Does this mean he gets promoted to Super Dad?" Sloan smiled. He already was. Later, as the applause quieted, Gavin slipped into the hallway. "Mr. Brooks," came a voice. It was Arthur Feldman, chairman of Mercer's board, with a rare smile. "That was one hell of a presentation." "Thank you, sir. You're not the janitor anymore. Effective immediately. We'd like to bring you in as lead innovation advisor." Gavin blinked. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," Arthur replied. "Just don't stop doing what you're doing." Arthur disappeared, and Gavin turned to find Sloan waiting quietly. "Guess that went better than expected," he said. "You made a room full of millionaires question their egos. Not bad for a night's work." "I didn't do it alone." He looked toward Lena, curled up on a bench, fists clutching the USB cartridge. "I said a lot of words up there," he continued, "but the only ones that mattered were the ones I didn't get to say. Like thank you for seeing me, for not running when it got hard." Her voice trembled. "I don't run anymore. I just circle the block a few times before I knock." Gavin smiled. "I thought I was doing all this for Lena, to give her something better. And now I think she gave me something better. A reason to stop hiding. A reason to try again." Sloan nodded. "What happens next?" Gavin looked at her, then at Lena. "We go home. Read a bedtime story. Try not to burn the eggs tomorrow." He paused. "And maybe, if you're not too busy saving the company, you join us for pancakes." She raised a brow. "You cook terribly, but I serve with style." She smiled. "Then it's a date. A breakfast. One step at a time, Brooks." And that night, as the city lit up in gold and violet hues outside their window, Gavin and Lena curled into the kind of peace you only earn through storms. And somewhere in the dark, a dragon remembered it could fly. Gavin sat on the edge of his couch, the soft rhythm of his daughter's breathing curled against his side, like a heartbeat he never wanted to forget. On the laptop screen across from them, an email blinked to life, its subject line bold and almost surreal. "Welcome to the leadership team." But it wasn't the job title that held him still. It wasn't the salary or the prestige. It was the quiet pulse beneath it. He was no longer the man behind the mop. He was the man who had learned how to be seen, not by changing who he was, but by finally standing tall in the skin he'd worn all along. Somewhere between wiping whiteboards and standing beneath spotlights, Gavin Brooks had discovered something he thought he'd lost forever: his voice. The boardroom stood empty now, a cavern of glass and echoes. The suits had left. The polite applause that once thundered off the rafters had dissolved, leaving only a whisper of tension embedded in the carpet. Asterisk, asterisk, the kind of tension that doesn't fade until someone finally speaks the truth. Asterisk, asterisk. Gavin stood by the window, a lukewarm cup of coffee in hand. Below him, the city buzzed like nothing had changed. And yet everything had. Behind him, the door opened. Quietly. No announcement, no bravado. Just Sloan Mercer, still wearing the same sharp black blazer from the presentation, though tonight it hung a little looser, like the weight of perfection had finally begun to lift from her shoulders. "Didn't expect you to still be here," she said gently. "Didn't expect to feel like I belonged here," he replied, eyes still on the city lights. Silence. Not awkward. Just full. Thick with everything neither had dared to say yet. She walked to the opposite end of the long table, pulling out a chair. It squeaked as she sat. "You were brilliant today," she said, watching him. "I didn't memorize a word of it. That's why it was brilliant." He smiled at last, turning to face her. "Then why do I still feel like I might wake up in my old uniform tomorrow?" Her voice softened, quiet and true. "Because people like us don't come from the kind of world where dreams feel safe. We build, we protect, but we rarely receive." His eyes studied her then, like he was seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. "You included. Especially me." She rose again, stepping closer, her posture less EO now, more woman. "You asked me once why I came back. Why I didn't just let the story fade. Yeah, it wasn't PR. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't even the algorithm." She looked down, her hands fidgeting. Asterisk, asterisk, a rare crack in the armor of a woman who once told a billionaire to get out of her boardroom if he wasn't ready to believe in vision. Asterisk, asterisk. "I came back because you made me feel something I hadn't felt in years." He didn't interrupt. He waited. Gentle. "It wasn't just the way you saw patterns in code. It was the way you looked at everything. Like broken pieces weren't disposable. Like they were building blocks." "That's because I'm made of broken pieces," he said softly. "Exactly," she whispered. Another step closer. "Do you know what it's like to be the smartest person in the room and still feel utterly alone in it?" He nodded slow. "Do you know what it's like to hold back good news because there's no one to share it with?" His voice was quiet. "Every time I brought Lena home a drawing from work, she clapped like I cured cancer." She laughed, soft and full, like a violin string just tuned right. Then she looked at him. "You scare me, Gavin." He blinked, surprised. "Why?" "Because you're not trying to impress me, or fix me, or chase anything. You're just here." "Exactly. And I don't know how to stand still long enough to believe that's safe." They didn't move. The only light was the blinking hum of the city, like the world's slow heartbeat. Then Gavin whispered, "You know what I realized tonight?" "Tell me." "That love doesn't always come dressed in grand gestures. Sometimes it shows up as a woman walking into a janitor's hallway and asking for answers." She laughed again, covering her mouth with her hand. "I'm not great with subtlety." "Good. I'm terrible at guessing games." He stepped closer. "I think I've been falling for you since the night you didn't erase what I wrote on the board. And I think I've been falling for you since you didn't apologize for writing it." They didn't collide. They simply met. Foreheads touched. Breath shared. No urgency. Just truth. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Anything. Do you think it's possible to build something real from something that started by accident?" He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "Some of the best stories begin when someone walks into the wrong room." "You think this is a story?" "No. I think it's a chapter we almost didn't get to write." She closed her eyes. Let it settle. Then open them again. "Promise me something." "Name it." "If I fall apart again, remind me who I really am." "Only if you promise to remind me when I forget who I've become." "Deal." They didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, they sat on the cold floor of that giant boardroom, backs against the glass, knees tucked up like kids watching fireworks. "This room's too fancy," Gavin muttered. We can fix that. How? Bring in more broken pieces. More coffee stains. Only if you brew it. He looked at her. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. That's probably why this works. Probably. Then he whispered, almost to himself, I don't want this to be a footnote. It won't be. And I don't want Lena to think people like me don't get to write endings. Then let's give her a new one. That night, when Gavin returned home, Lena was still awake, tucked inside her blanket, fort like a queen in hiding. A flashlight lit her face, and a half-eaten banana sat beside her. She blinked up at him. Did you tell her? Tell her what? That you like her. Like her. He laughed. Yeah, I think she figured it out. Did she like you back? It's looking promising. She nodded solemnly. Good. I was worried you'd mess it up. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kiddo. You're welcome. Also, don't burn the pancakes tomorrow. She might come over. He kissed her forehead and pulled the blanket over her shoulders. As he turned off the lights, a thought brushed through his mind like a breeze. Maybe some stories don't need perfect plot twists. Maybe they just need the courage to begin again. Sunday mornings in Gavin's apartment were sacred. The air smelled of cinnamon toast and bad coffee, the kind made too strong and poured too fast. The kitchen window was cracked open, letting in a soft breeze and the hum of weekend life, bikes zipping by, neighbors shouting greetings, a dog barking 2 floors down. Sloane stood barefoot in the living room, hair braided loosely over one shoulder, wearing one of Gavin's flannel shirts like it had always belonged to her. She wasn't working. She wasn't checking her phone. She was here. She's been in there for 30 minutes, Sloane whispered, sipping coffee. That's concentration, Gavin replied, cracking eggs into the pan. Either something magical is happening, or she's feeding goldfish to the toaster again. Should we be worried? A little. Then, from the bedroom, Dad, Sloane, you need to see this. They exchanged a look, raised eyebrows, half amusement, half dread. Gavin wiped his hands and led the way. Inside, Lena was perched at the edge of Gavin's ancient desktop. Her eyes sparkled. On the screen, Lena's Labyrinth. A simple game Gavin had built years ago. Mazes. Puzzles. A pixelated AI dragon named Sparks. But today, something new. A blinking button. Update available. What's this? Sloane asked. It's not for me, Lena whispered. Actually, Gavin said, kneeling beside her. It is. He clicked the update. The screen flickered. Then pixel by pixel, an animation began. A cartoon janitor swept a lonely hallway under flickering lights. A paper airplane struck him gently. He turned to find a woman in a business suit, holding a crumpled sketch of code. Sloane gasped. Is that? Keep watching, Gavin whispered. The janitor studied the sketch, then smiled. Suddenly, a girl on a dragon swooped in, scooping them both up. They soared over a pixelated city, trailing binary code like fireworks. They landed on a rooftop under the stars. The screen faded to black. Then words appeared. Dear Sloane, if you're reading this, press enter. Her hand hovered. Her voice trembled. This is really happening? You'll want to press enter. She did. Photos. Sketches. Memories unfolded on the screen like a slow bloom. Gavin scribbling on a whiteboard. Lena holding up a world's best dad mug. Sloane asleep on Gavin's shoulder during a late-night brainstorm. The 3 of them, laughing over pancakes, messy hair, and syrup kisses. Then more words. Asterisk, you gave me back my voice. You saw value in me before I could show it. You didn't fix me. You stood beside me while I grew. So now I'm asking asterisk, will you be part of our family forever? Behind her, Gavin stood quietly. He held a small box. A ring. Simple. Gold. No diamonds. No noise. It's not perfect, he said softly. But neither are we. And that's what makes it real. Tears welled in Sloane's eyes. She turned to him. You didn't just write a proposal, she whispered. You wrote our story. And I want to keep writing it with both of you. From the corner, Lena added sternly, say yes. He can't cook alone. Laughter broke like sunlight. Sloane took the ring, slipped it on. Perfect fit. Yes, Gavin Brooks, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times over. That evening, the three of them sat on the fire escape, watching the sun melt over the city skyline. Gavin held Sloane's hand in one. Lena pressed against the other. The city pulsed below. But they were still. What do we tell people? Sloane asked, resting her head on his shoulder. The truth, Gavin said. That a janitor fell in love with CEO. That a man who nearly gave up found a woman brave enough to stay. And that a little girl with a toy dragon made it all happen. Exactly that, Lena murmured, not even opening her eyes. Gavin smiled. That's not a story, Sloane whispered. That's a miracle. And as stars blinked awake overhead, Gavin looked at the horizon. Once so far, now simply the beginning of something new. He had spent years cleaning up the messes of others. But this was something he built himself. Not a rescue. Not a fairy tale. Just three imperfect hearts choosing each other. And in that gentle, radiant truth, he found home. And that, dear listener, is the story of how a janitor's quiet brilliance, a little girl's fiery hope, and a CEO's brave heart rewrote what family means. But now, I want to hear your story. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I read them all, and your words matter more than you know. If this story stirred something inside you, if it reminded you that love, redemption, and quiet courage are still possible, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next tale. There's always another chapter waiting. Until then, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never, ever underestimate the power of a gentle heart.